Title: Shadows of Deceit. Chapter 1. A Seed of Doubt. It was a warm Friday afternoon, the kind that normally made Lisa and Jason's dinners feel almost peaceful. They had been married for 10 years, and their life had settled into the comfortable rhythm that comes with familiarity. But that evening, as they sat at the dinner table, something was different. Lisa's fork hovered above her plate, her appetite dulled by the nagging sense that something was wrong. Jason sat across from her, his phone in hand, grinning at something on the screen. He wasn't laughing at their conversation, but at the messages he was reading. Lisa had noticed him texting more often lately, but tonight it felt different. His laughter wasn't for her, wasn't part of the life they shared. There was a distance in the air between them, something she couldn't quite place. She told herself it was nothing. After all, Jason was devoted. Wasn't he? As the seconds ticked by, Lisa tried to brush the feeling aside. Maybe it was just a work message, or one of his friends being funny. But as Jason's laughter carried on, a small voice inside her whispered, "This isn't right." That night, the unease refused to leave her. It sat with her as she washed the dishes, lingered as they watched TV, and followed her to bed, gnawing at the edges of her peace. For the first time in their marriage, Lisa found herself questioning Jason's loyalty. She hadn't wanted to believe it. 10 years. That's how long they had been building a life together. She loved him, trusted him, blindly, maybe. And Jason had always been reliable, solid, the kind of man who was predictable in the best way. But predictability was what made this shift so unsettling. This wasn't Jason. Over the next few days, that feeling only grew. On Monday, Jason called her from work, saying he had to stay late. That had never been unusual before, but it was the third time that week. Each excuse piled onto her mounting suspicion. Late nights, cryptic texts, and the constant presence of his phone began to feel like evidence she couldn't ignore. As Lisa sat alone in their living room that evening, her mind swirled with doubt. She wanted to be wrong. She needed to be wrong. But the more she thought about it, the more stories came to mind. Stories of her friends, co-workers, and the women she had known over the years. They had once trusted their partners too, and yet, things had fallen apart for them. Lisa had always felt immune to those tragedies. Her marriage, her life, was different, wasn't it? Jason came home late that night, tired and distant. He kissed her on the cheek, smiled in a way that was almost routine, but something was missing. His warmth, his attentiveness. It was as if a part of him was somewhere else, with someone else. As he disappeared upstairs to shower, Lisa found herself in a familiar but foreign position, sitting on the edge of their bed, staring at his phone on the nightstand. Her heart raced as she contemplated what she was about to do. She'd never snooped before, never felt the need to. But something inside her had shifted. Her fingers hovered over the phone, hesitant. No, she thought, don't be that person. Trust him. But when she reached for it, her heart dropped. The screen was locked. Jason never used to lock his phone. Why would he now? The knot in her stomach tightened. She put the phone back down and tried to calm herself. Maybe she was being paranoid. After all, trust had always been the cornerstone of their relationship. But this felt different. This time, it was like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, peering down into an abyss she couldn't pull herself back from. That night, after Jason had fallen asleep, Lisa lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. She listened to the rhythmic sound of his breathing, trying to convince herself that everything was fine. But her mind raced, and no matter how hard she tried to push the thoughts away, they kept coming back. Was she losing her mind? Or was something really wrong? The next day, Lisa confided in her best friend, Emily, over coffee. Emily had always been the more direct one, the one who didn't shy away from hard truths. "You need to confront him," Emily said, her voice firm and unwavering. "If something's going on, you deserve to know." Lisa bit her lip, shaking her head. "I can't. Not yet. What if I'm wrong? What if it's nothing, and I accuse him of something terrible?" Emily leaned forward, her brow furrowed with concern. "Lisa, you've been married to Jason for a decade. You know him better than anyone. If your gut is telling you something, you owe it to yourself to find out the truth." "I need proof," Lisa whispered. "I can't just accuse him without knowing for sure." Emily studied her for a moment, then nodded. Okay, so how do you get proof? Lisa hadn't thought that far ahead. She wasn't the type to dig through someone's personal life, but now that the seed of doubt had been planted, she knew she couldn't just sit back and hope for things to go back to normal. She needed to know. That evening, Lisa waited for the right moment. Jason had just finished dinner and was heading upstairs for his nightly shower. It was the perfect opportunity. She followed him to the bedroom, her heart pounding with guilt and anticipation. As soon as the water started running, she grabbed his phone from the nightstand. She couldn't unlock it, but she didn't need to. Instead, she opened her laptop and quickly downloaded a discreet tracking app, syncing it with Jason's phone before he could come back. Her hands shook as she set the phone back down, the weight of what she had just done crashing down on her. She had crossed a line, but it was too late to turn back now. When Jason emerged from the shower, she acted like nothing had happened. They exchanged their usual goodnights, and Lisa curled up beside him in bed, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. Over the next few days, Lisa watched the tracking app like a hawk. Jason's movements were typical at first: work, the grocery store, the gym. But then, one Friday evening, Jason told her he was heading out for a guy's night. Lisa tried to act casual, her voice steady as she said, "Have fun." As soon as he left, she opened the app and saw the little blue dot moving across the screen. Her pulse quickened as she watched him drive across town. The blue dot stopped at a hotel. Lisa's heart sank. She stared at the screen, hoping it was some mistake, a glitch in the system. But it wasn't. Her mind raced, and before she knew it, she was grabbing her keys and driving across town. She parked a block away from the hotel, sitting in the driver's seat, paralyzed by fear and anticipation. And then she saw him. Jason walked out of the hotel lobby, arm in arm with a woman Lisa had never seen before. Tall, blonde, beautiful. They laughed together, oblivious to the world around them. Lisa's chest tightened as she snapped a few photos from the car. Her hands trembled, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her worst fears had been confirmed. Jason was cheating. But even as the pain tore through her, something else stirred inside Lisa. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was anger. A quiet, burning fury that she hadn't felt before. She wasn't going to fall apart. She wasn't going to confront him just yet. No, she had a different plan. A better one. Jason had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. My heart goes out to Lisa. That gut-wrenching feeling of knowing something is wrong but being too scared to face the truth is one of the worst things anyone can experience. I can completely understand why she hesitated to confront Jason. After 10 years of marriage, trusting someone becomes second nature. But those little changes, the laughter at his phone, staying late at work, even locking his phone, they all add up. It's heartbreaking to see her torn between trusting her husband and trusting her gut. I hope she gets the proof she needs because no one deserves to live with that kind of doubt and betrayal. Stay strong, Lisa. Chapter 2. The game begins. The weekend arrived, and with it came the news that sent Lisa's suspicions spiraling even further out of control. Jason casually mentioned that he was heading out for a guy's night. His voice was just a little too smooth, his tone too rehearsed. Lisa could feel the tightness in her chest, a quiet alarm ringing inside her as she watched him move around the room, nonchalantly grabbing his jacket from the closet. It had been years since he'd mentioned a night out with his friends, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. Jason seemed different. Too calm, too relaxed for someone who was supposedly just going to catch up with old buddies. He was usually meticulous with his plans, always offering her details. What time he'd be home, who he'd be seeing. But this time, his answers were vague, almost dismissive. "Just a couple of guys from work, nothing big," he said with a shrug, as he bent down to kiss her on the cheek. Lisa forced a smile, but inside, her mind was racing. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs as she watched him walk out the door. "Have fun," she managed to say, her voice tight. The door closed with a soft click, and just like that, Jason was gone. As soon as his car disappeared down the driveway, Lisa collapsed onto the couch, her heart pounding. She stared at the spot where he had stood just moments ago, replaying the scene over and over in her mind. Was she overreacting? Maybe it really was just a harmless night out. But why did everything feel so wrong? She needed to know. The need to be certain burned in her chest like fire. Without hesitation, she grabbed her laptop from the coffee table and opened it with trembling hands. A quick few clicks, and the tracking app she had secretly installed on Jason's phone flashed to life. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the screen, watching the tiny blue that represented Jason moving steadily across the city. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as her mind battled with her heart. This wasn't right. She shouldn't be doing this. But she couldn't stop now. The nagging feeling in her gut was too strong, her instinct screaming at her to pay attention. For a while, the blue dot moved predictably, heading toward the part of town where Jason's usual haunts were, bars and restaurants he had mentioned before. Lisa's heart pounded louder in her ears, her stomach twisted into tight knots. But then the dot stopped. Not at a bar, not at a friend's house, but at a hotel. Lisa's world seemed to tilt on its axis. The air felt thick and heavy around her as she stared at the screen, her eyes widening in disbelief. A hotel? There was no logical reason for Jason to be there. He'd said it was just a casual night out, a few beers with friends. But the evidence was staring her in the face, cold and undeniable. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her mind screamed in denial, trying to find some way to rationalize it. But deep down, she knew. Something was very, very wrong. She couldn't sit there any longer. Her body moved on autopilot, numb and mechanical. Lisa grabbed her keys, her movements hurried and clumsy, and stumbled out the door. The drive across the city felt surreal, the world outside her car moving in slow motion. Her mind raced with questions, each one more painful than the last. Why? How long? Who was she? As she pulled up a block away from the hotel, the sight of the building loomed in front of her like a dark omen. She parked the car, but couldn't bring herself to get out. She sat there, frozen, her hands trembling so violently she had to grip the steering wheel just to steady them. Her heart felt like it was about to explode out of her chest. A sickening wave of nausea washed over her, but she forced herself to keep her eyes on the hotel entrance. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Lisa's mind raced, thinking of every possible outcome, every scenario that might explain what was happening. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But deep down, she knew better. Then she saw him. Jason walked out of the hotel lobby, and Lisa's world shattered into a million pieces. He wasn't alone. His arm was draped casually around a woman's shoulders, someone Lisa had never seen before. Tall, blonde, her figure perfect in a way that made Lisa feel suddenly self-conscious. She wore a tight-fitting dress, far too provocative for what Jason had described as a simple guy's night. They were laughing, carefree, as if they had no idea that someone was watching. The sight of Jason, the man she had loved and trusted for so many years, with another woman, cut through Lisa like a knife. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she thought she might actually be sick. Her hand shook as she fumbled for her phone. She didn't want to take the photos. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to look away, to leave, to pretend this wasn't happening. But she knew she needed proof. She needed something concrete, something undeniable. She raised her phone, snapping a few shaky photos of Jason and the blonde as they walked to his car, completely unaware of the devastation they were leaving in their wake. Tears stung at her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to let herself fall apart. Not here. Not now. She had to keep it together, at least for a little while longer. As Jason and the woman drove away, Lisa sat there in stunned silence. The realization hit her with the weight of a sledgehammer. Jason wasn't the man she thought he was. The man she had built a life with, the man she had loved for so long, had betrayed her in the worst way possible. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, her knuckles white with the force of her grip. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Everything she had believed in, everything she had trusted, was crumbling around her. And yet, even as the pain consumed her, something else began to stir deep inside. Anger. A quiet, simmering anger that she hadn't felt before. It wasn't just sadness or betrayal. It was fury. Fury at Jason for his deceit. Fury at herself for not seeing the signs sooner. But most of all, fury at the fact that he had taken something precious from her. He had taken her trust, her love, and shattered it without a second thought. Lisa took a deep breath, her tears drying in the cold air. This wasn't the end. Not yet. She wasn't going to fall apart. Not now. Jason didn't know it yet, but he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Wow, my heart breaks for Lisa. You can feel the pain in every moment, from her suspicions bubbling up to that devastating moment outside the hotel. It's awful when the person you trust with your whole life betrays you like that. I can't even imagine the strength it took for her to hold it together and take those photos. Jason's behavior was such a red flag from the start. His vague answers, the rehearsed tone. It's like he didn't even care enough to hide it better. I hope Lisa knows she deserves so much better, and I'm rooting for her revenge. Jason has no idea what's coming his way. Stay strong, Lisa. Chapter 3. A Plan in Motion. The morning light filtered through the curtains as Jason strolled back into the house, his face still carrying that smug, self-assured grin from the night before. Lisa greeted him with a soft smile, acting every bit the devoted wife, even as her stomach churned with the memory of what she had witnessed. Jason had no idea his secret was unraveling right in front of him. "Morning," Jason said casually, dropping his keys on the kitchen counter. He stretched, as if it had been just another typical night with his friends, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath Lisa's calm exterior. "Good morning," Lisa replied, her voice steady, masking the bitter fury that had simmered all night. She poured him a cup of coffee and slid it across the counter, all while her mind was racing with plans of revenge. As Jason took a sip, Lisa studied him carefully. He didn't suspect a thing. Why would he? She had. Message revealed the most crucial detail of all. Sarah worked in HR. The affair wasn't just personal. It was professional misconduct. Their relationship was a clear violation of the company's policies, and if the higher-ups found out, Jason wouldn't just lose his promotion. He'd lose his job. Lisa smiled as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This was it. Jason had handed her the weapon she needed to destroy him, and he didn't even know it. She gathered all the evidence, every email, every text message, every receipt, and saved it carefully in a folder on her laptop. With one click, she could send it all to Jason's boss, anonymously, of course. The company's code of conduct was strict, and Lisa knew they wouldn't hesitate to fire him. As she stared at the screen, a mixture of satisfaction and rage coursed through her veins. This was it. Her chance to make him pay for his betrayal. Her chance to show him that she wasn't the naive, trusting wife he thought she was. Jason had no idea what was coming. He thought he could fool her, that she would never know. But Lisa was smarter than that, and now she had the power to tear his world apart. With a final, decisive click, she sent the evidence to Jason's boss. The trap had been set, and now all she had to do was wait. Lisa is absolutely brilliant. The way she kept her cool, even after seeing Jason's betrayal firsthand, shows just how strong she is. It would have been so easy to confront him in anger, but instead, she's playing the long game, and it's going to hit him where it hurts the most, his career. The fact that she reached out to Greg, knowing he had his own reasons to take Jason down, shows just how calculated and smart she is. Jason has no idea what's coming, and honestly, he deserves every bit of what's headed his way. Karma really is a dish best served cold, and Lisa is serving it perfectly. You go, girl. Chapter 4. The Unraveling. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a dim glow in the kitchen as Lisa set the table for dinner. The air was thick with tension, but Lisa maintained a serene smile. She had spent the day orchestrating the perfect storm for Jason, one that would dismantle his carefully constructed facade. The thought of his impending downfall sent a thrill coursing through her. When Jason finally walked through the door, the weariness of his day hung on him like a heavy cloak. He dropped his briefcase by the door, the sound echoing in the silence. Lisa looked up from her spot at the table, her smile unwavering. "How was your day, hon?" "Just another day in paradise," he replied, shrugging off his tie. The casual tone in his voice made her blood boil, but she kept her expression neutral. As they settled down to dinner, the familiar clinking of cutlery filled the air. Lisa poured wine into their glasses, her hands steady despite the tempest of emotions raging inside her. Then, with a lightness that felt foreign amidst the brewing chaos, she asked, "So, how's the promotion going?" Jason leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. "Oh, it's in the bag," he declared confidently, his eyes sparkling with self-satisfaction. "I'll hear back any day now. I can almost taste the corner office." The sight of him, so blissfully unaware of the trap she had set, ignited a fire of anger within Lisa. The realization that he had no idea about her plan filled her with a mix of excitement and rage. She smiled sweetly, concealing the storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. He won't see this coming, she thought, savoring the moment. After dinner, Lisa retreated to her home office under the guise of catching up on some work. In reality, she was carefully preparing the final piece of her revenge. She opened her laptop and logged into the email account she had created just for this purpose. The evidence she had collected, texts, photos, and timestamps documenting Jason's infidelity, was neatly organized and ready to be sent. With a few clicks, Lisa attached the files and sent the email to Jason's boss, made sure to act like everything was fine. But beneath the surface, Lisa's mind was already working. She knew that confronting him now wouldn't give her the satisfaction she needed. No, Jason needed to pay for what he had done, and Lisa needed to be smart about how she would make him suffer. Over the past few weeks, Jason had been buzzing with excitement over a potential promotion at work. It was all he could talk about, the position that would double his salary and bring a new level of status to their lives. He had been practically obsessed, already imagining the doors it would open for him. And now, Lisa saw it as the perfect opportunity to bring him down. His career meant everything to him, and that was where she would strike. Later that day, after Jason left for work, Lisa sat down at her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't destroy him on her own, but she could enlist the help of someone who had just as much reason to see Jason fall. Greg. Greg had been an old acquaintance, someone Lisa had met a few times at Jason's company parties. He wasn't close to Jason, and Lisa remembered hearing about their conflicts over the years. Jason often spoke about Greg with disdain, calling him that smug bastard who had tried to undercut him in the past. But the more Jason ranted about him, the more Lisa realized Greg could be the ally she needed. With a few clicks, Lisa found Greg's contact information. It didn't take much to get him interested. A simple text, flirtatious, suggestive, and within minutes, he responded. They agreed to meet for dinner that evening, and Lisa knew she had him hooked. At the restaurant, Lisa played her cards carefully. Dressed in a sleek black dress that highlighted her figure, she smiled coyly at Greg as they sat down. She needed to charm him, to make him feel like she trusted him with something important, something personal, and Greg, eager for validation and the chance to bring Jason down a peg, was all too willing to listen. After some light conversation, Lisa leaned in, lowering her voice just enough to create an air of intimacy. "Greg, I need your help," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. Greg's interest piqued. He sat forward, his elbows resting on the table. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice laced with curiosity. Lisa sighed, as if she were struggling with what to say. She wanted to sell this carefully. "It's about Jason," she began, watching his reaction closely. "He's been seeing someone else?" Greg raised an eyebrow, his eyes narrowing. "Jason? Having an affair?" Lisa nodded, letting the sadness show in her expression. "I didn't want to believe it, but I found out last night. He's been cheating on me with someone from work, someone in HR." Greg's eyes lit up at that. The connection wasn't lost on him. HR and Jason meant one thing: company policy violations. "And I need your help to prove it," Lisa continued, her voice steady, though her heart pounded with anticipation. "I know you two have had your differences, but if you can help me dig up the proof, I'll owe you more than you could imagine." Greg smirked, clearly enjoying the thought of bringing Jason down. "I'll help you," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I've got access to emails, and I can pull some strings. Trust me, Lisa. If Jason's been messing around, we'll find out." They continued their dinner, Lisa playing the role of the wronged wife, feeding Greg just enough information to keep him invested. She knew what kind of man Greg was. Someone who thrived on power, on the thrill of taking someone else down. And now, Jason was in his crosshairs. Over the next few days, Greg worked quickly. It wasn't long before the emails and text messages between Jason and his mistress, who Lisa now knew was named Sarah, started flooding in. There were even hotel receipts, timestamps perfectly aligning with Jason's late nights. The affair wasn't just real, it was blatant. But then, something even better fell into Lisa's lap. 1. Ensuring it was completely anonymous. The thrill of what she was doing coursed through her, each keystroke a step closer to the satisfaction she craved. The next day unfolded with a sickening sense of anticipation. As Jason left for work, Lisa watched him from the window, his back straight and confident, blissfully ignorant of the storm she had unleashed. "Enjoy your last day at the office," she thought, suppressing a smile. Hours passed like minutes, each tick of the clock amplifying her excitement. Finally, the sound of Jason's key turning in the lock echoed through the house, signaling his return. He stepped inside. The color drained from his face, and Lisa's heart raced with a mix of joy and vindication. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning concern as he stood in the hallway, his hands trembling. "It's like someone set me up," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "They found out about her." His words hung in the air, heavy with disbelief and confusion. Lisa's stomach twisted in delight at the sight of his panic. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone dripping with faux sympathy. "What happened?" "They fired me," he stammered, his eyes wide with shock. "They said they couldn't trust me anymore. Someone sent them evidence." His voice cracked as realization washed over him. "I don't understand. I've worked so hard for this." Lisa leaned forward, concern etched on her face. "Oh, Jason, I'm so sorry. That's awful." Inside, however, she was reveling in his confusion and despair. "This is just the beginning," she thought, suppressing a triumphant grin. She stood up, moving to wrap her arms around him in a comforting embrace. Jason leaned into her, searching for solace, while Lisa felt the surge of power. She played the role of the supportive wife perfectly, whispering words of comfort even as she reveled in the chaos she had orchestrated. As they stood together, a whirlwind of emotions swirling between them, Lisa knew that this was only the beginning of her revenge. She was determined to make Jason feel every ounce of pain he had inflicted upon her, and she would enjoy every moment of it. The unraveling had only just begun, and Lisa was ready to watch it all unfold. Chapter 5. The Final Blow. The weekend arrived, cloaked in a tense silence that lingered between Lisa and Jason. The air was thick with unspoken words, but Lisa was resolute. She could feel the excitement bubbling beneath her calm exterior, her mind racing with the plan she had meticulously crafted. This time, she would deliver a blow that would leave Jason utterly shattered. When Jason announced that he was meeting up with friends again, Lisa's heart raced with a mix of fury and satisfaction. She suspected he was heading to another hotel rendezvous, likely with the same woman who had become a thorn in her side. But this time, Lisa wouldn't simply wait for the fallout. She would be proactive. Early that Saturday, she booked a room at the same hotel, selecting one right next door to where she suspected Jason would be. The thrill of the chase coursed through her veins as she prepared herself for the confrontation. She packed a small bag with essentials, including a hidden camera, ensuring she was fully equipped to document the moment Jason's world came crashing down. As the afternoon sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow through her hotel room, Lisa paced the floor, her heart pounding in anticipation. She could almost feel the adrenaline coursing through her. "This is it," she thought, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. She carefully set up the camera, ensuring it was discreetly positioned to capture everything. Finally, the moment arrived. She glanced at the clock, noting that it was nearly time for Jason's rendezvous. Tension coiled tightly within her as she imagined the look on his face when he realized he had been caught. Lisa felt empowered, almost invincible, as she waited for the sound of the door to open. Minutes felt like hours, but when she finally heard the unmistakable sound of Jason's voice, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was about to unfold. The door creaked open, and laughter drifted through the thin walls, followed by the sound of shuffling footsteps. "He's here," she thought, her heart racing. With determination, Lisa waited, heart thumping loudly in her chest. She counted the seconds until she was sure they were fully engrossed in their illicit encounter. Then, summoning every ounce of courage and conviction, she flung open her door and strode into the room. The shock on Jason's face was instantaneous and priceless. There he was, caught in the act, his mistress frozen beside him, eyes wide with disbelief. Lisa held her camera aloft, recording the chaos unfolding before her. "Surprise," she said, her voice steady and cold, dripping with contempt. "I hope it was worth it." The horror on Jason's face morphed into a mask of panic as he scrambled to cover himself, the reality of his situation crashing down around him. "Lisa, what are you doing here?" he stammered, trying to piece together an explanation that would never come. "Let me help you with that," she shot back, stepping further into the room, her gaze unwavering as she pointed the camera at him. "No need to hide. The world deserves to see who you really are." The mistress looked between them, bewildered, and hastily pulled on her clothes, but Lisa paid her no mind. Her focus remained squarely on Jason. The way he was squirming, the realization of his betrayal dawning on him. It was everything she had hoped for and more. "You think you can just do whatever you want without consequences?" Lisa continued, her voice cool and steady, each word laced with venom. "You think I wouldn't find out? You're nothing but a coward, Jason." He opened his mouth to protest, but the words faltered. The shame on his face was palpable, a stark contrast to the bravado he had exuded just days before. Lisa's heart raced with satisfaction as she captured every moment on camera, every flicker of fear and panic that crossed his features. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done," she declared, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "You'll never get away with this. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too? Well, now you'll lose it all." With that, she turned on her heel, leaving Jason in a state of shock and horror. As she walked out, the sound of her heart pounding filled her ears, a mix of triumph and exhilaration. The thrill of having the upper hand sent a rush of adrenaline through her body. She had finally taken control, exposing Jason for who he truly was. Back in her own room, Lisa shut the door behind her, her heart racing. She felt lighter, freer, and more powerful than she ever had before. The moment had come full circle. She was no longer the broken woman who had been blindsided by betrayal. She was the one in charge now, ready to reclaim her life. As she uploaded the footage from the hidden camera, Lisa couldn't help but smile. This was her final blow, the culmination of her journey from pain to power. And as the video began to process, she felt a sense of satisfaction that she had never thought possible. Jason would soon learn the true meaning of consequences, and she would be there to witness every moment of his unraveling. After everything Jason put her through, it's so satisfying to see her finally take control and get the revenge she deserves. I mean, the way she planned everything down to the hidden camera is just brilliant. It's like she turned her pain into strength, and I can totally relate. Sometimes it feels like the only way to heal is to show the betrayer that their actions have consequences. I'm cheering for her all the way. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. In the days that followed the explosive confrontation, Jason was a man undone. He spent his time trying to win Lisa back, frantically calling and texting, sending long-winded apologies filled with promises and pleas for forgiveness. Each message dripped with desperation, but Lisa had made her decision long before he realized the depth of his betrayal. She had filed for divorce, and there was no turning back. Lisa sat at her dining room table, a cup of coffee steaming beside her as she meticulously organized the evidence of Jason's indiscretions. The hidden camera footage played on her laptop, a haunting reminder of the humiliation she had endured. But now, it was her weapon, a tool to ensure she emerged from this battle unscathed. She had consulted a lawyer who was impressed by the material she presented, outlining a plan that would guarantee her a secure future. "I'm going to get you everything you deserve," her lawyer had reassured her, reviewing the footage once more. "We'll ensure he can't contest anything with this." With each passing day, Jason's pleas grew increasingly frantic, but they fell on deaf ears. The house, the car, and most of their joint assets, everything he once took for granted, were being secured for Lisa. She took a deep breath, savoring the feeling of empowerment that washed over her. The once overwhelming sadness and pain had morphed into a determination to reclaim her life. Jason's world began to crumble around him. He lost his job due to the scandal that followed Lisa's revelations. His boss had no choice but to let him go when the anonymous reports surfaced about his unprofessional conduct. The whispers at the office had turned into outright disdain, and Jason's reputation deteriorated faster than he could fathom. No one wanted to be associated with a man who had betrayed his wife so publicly. When Jason finally confronted Lisa one last time, the facade of bravado was gone. He looked haggard, a man beaten down by his own choices. "I never meant for it to go this far," he stammered, his voice a mix of anger and despair. "You can't do this to me. You'll ruin everything." Lisa met his gaze, a calm resolve in her eyes. "You did this to yourself, Jason. You ruined our life together, and now you want me to feel sorry for you? No, I'm not going to play that game anymore. I'm moving on." Her voice was steady, and with every word, she felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of his guilt. The divorce was finalized without much fanfare. Lisa stood in the courtroom, her heart racing with anticipation and relief as the judge declared her free. She left the building, her head held high, ready to embrace the future. The betrayal that had once shattered her now felt like the catalyst for a new beginning. She was no longer the woman who had been blindsided by deceit. She was a force to be reckoned with. As she drove away from the courthouse in her new car, one she had purchased with her own money, she smiled. The sun was shining bright, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she could see a path ahead filled with possibilities. Lisa decided to focus on her own dreams and ambitions. She enrolled in a course to further her career and explored hobbies she had long neglected. The creative spark within her was reignited, and she began to paint again, pouring her emotions into vibrant canvases that captured her journey of resilience. With each stroke, she felt a sense of liberation, channeling the pain of the past into something beautiful and meaningful. Friends who had rallied around her through the ordeal began to notice her transformation. They marveled at her newfound confidence, her ability to smile genuinely without the shadows of doubt lurking behind her eyes. Lisa even began to host small art shows, where she could showcase her work and connect with others who had experienced similar heartaches. In her personal life, she began to explore new relationships, allowing herself to trust again, but this time with boundaries firmly in place. She was no longer the woman who would tolerate betrayal. She was a woman who knew her worth and demanded respect. As she sat in her studio one evening, surrounded by her artwork, Lisa reflected on her journey. The pain that once consumed her had transformed into strength, clarity, and an unyielding belief in herself. The life she was building was vibrant and full of promise, a stark contrast to the dark days of her past. This wasn't just the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter for Lisa, one that would unfold beautifully, devoid of the shadows of deceit that had once held her captive. She felt invigorated by the limitless potential of her future, ready to embrace whatever came next. The story of her life was now one of empowerment, healing, and endless possibilities. The end? No, this was just the beginning. Wow, what a powerful conclusion to Lisa's journey. I can't help but feel so proud of her. Jason thought he could just apologize his way back into her life after such a betrayal, but Lisa showed him that she's stronger than he ever realized. Filing for divorce and taking control of her future was a huge step, and it's so inspiring to see her transform her pain into passion and creativity. Her journey of self-discovery reminds us all that sometimes the worst experiences can lead to the most incredible new beginnings. Lisa is no longer defined by Jason's actions. She's found her voice, her strength, and her purpose. Here's to embracing empowerment and moving on from toxic relationships. I can't wait to see what's next for her. This is a story of resilience we all need to hear.